So, hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I am really happy to have my good friend Jeff Jergy with me. Jeff is the founder and CEO, president of Oyster Aero.
Thanks, Craig.
Kind of moved into his new thing with Oyster about a year ago, and thrilled to have him on talk about kind of the parts market and where he's going with it. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the CEO title, but part of the fun of having Oyster Aero is I call myself the Chief of Pearls.
Chief of Pearls. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Get to have a little bit of fun.
There you go.
We did that on the name. When I wanted to start this business, first off, I wanted to start my own company for 20 years, 25 years. And, when we were picking a name, I would have named it something really, really, surplus solutions warehouse or something, And my family, we were all kind of involved in it. My dad was a small business owner. He's a veterinarian. And so we were kind of always involved in the practice and all that. But so I wanted to get my kids involved. I wanted to get my wife involved. And so they were like, just do something different. Like, just pick something that's, unique. And, I'm from... you're on the East Coast. I'm from Maryland originally. Grew up on Chesapeake Bay, and so we were like thinking, okay, well, why don't we try to do something that's a little different, that's not just your standard. So we picked Oyster Aero, and the idea was because we focus on surplus inventory, we say that there's pearls in every inventory. You just have to dig a little to find them, and so we kind of named the company around the purpose for it, and that's kind of how Oyster Aero came about.
I love it. When I first started out, I just did a big rebranding.
Yeah.
When I first started, my company, it was, I'm embarrassed to say, my wife and I were probably two bottles of wine into it. And said, let's just name it North Star Group.
There may have been a little of that involved as well.
Yeah, there you go. And then I realized, like, there's a million North Stars out there, and you get buried and whatever else. So,
what are you rebranded to now?
It's just Craig Picken.
Craig. What better brand is there than that?
I just figured everybody just knows to call Craig, right? That's it. So, just call Saul. That's you remember. So, there you go.
I like it.
So, talk about what you're doing. What's up with Oyster Aero? Tell me how you got into it. What you're doing.
Yeah. So, I kind of started this industry. I've been in distribution. I ran the GE engine line for Aviol. I stood up at Boeing MRO after they kind of took over Aviol. I came to Memphis to work for GCAS, to do teardowns, and then I was with a couple of marketplaces. And so for years and years, I've always wanted to start something. So Oyster Aero was basically that. And I can't remember the leader that said it, but basically the gist of it is figure out where everybody's going. And of course, everybody's going online, and everybody's moving to transactional, and then kind of think about what they missed. And for me, for years, I felt that today, if you want to sell parts, you put them on a marketplace by part number, and you have a sales team, and people have to either sell on that part number or look for that part number to go find it. And surplus inventory is hard. It doesn't sell itself. And so I wanted to help solve for the inventory that's been sitting around for a year or two. So when we sign up people, we say it has to be flying. Somebody brought me DC-9 inventory, and I told them to go away, respectfully. I can't talk to ghosts, is what I tell people. But, our specialty is to take inventory that still has applications, but it's just kind of buried out there. And the big marketplaces, they're like Walmart. You go in, there's 20 billion parts records. And if somebody is not typing in that part number, or somebody's not running a special with their sales team, or somebody's not, moving on it, then nobody really knows that surplus inventory is sitting there. And, addressable market is, I can't even put a number on it, and it's really hard to get to. I do some consulting on the side, or have in the past as well. And trying to estimate surplus inventory and the impact it has to the economy, macroeconomy, is huge. So, if I just pick an example, I say Boeing or Airbus, and they have Safran and Boeing and Aviol and all that, but those organizations, their distribution aftermarket business is 10, 15, $20 billion. And estimated, but 20 to 30% of that inventory just sits there. So I can name two companies and come up with $2, $3, $4 billion in surplus inventory. And then you have the manufacturers, you have the distributors, you have the MROs, you have the operators. And so you can really, really quickly get up to $100 billion estimate, maybe even more by the time you add in military, by the time you add in business aviation. So, a USM guy that goes to buy an airplane and tears it down, 20% of the parts sell, the 80% remain. So, and those are the sales that just happen, right? There's demand for it. An airline comes in or an operator comes in and they buy it, but there's so much inventory that's just, sits and sits and sits, or at least is involved in some sort of write-down policy. And so, besides wanting to start my own company, of course, I wanted to try to do something that would be impactful as idealistic as that sounds. And so what we're trying to do is bring a little life to inventory, help companies get some cash back on inventory that's starting to be written down or written off completely, and have a little fun while we're doing it as a chief of pearls.
Chief of pearls, you find something in it. I get all these emails from these guys that make office furniture out of old nacelles. You can go buy
absolutely
wings and stuff like that. I'm like, that's great, but they want 15 grand for a desk. I'm like, come on, I'm cheap.
Yeah,
I know what you paid for that. I know what you paid for that thing. It's no, it's cool.
Even scrap. I mean, so a lot of companies will just scrap things, and private equity companies are moving into USM, and they'll buy an airplane and they'll say, well, pull the 20 parts off and then just scrap the rest of the airplane. And that's good and bad. I guess it's good in the sense that they get their profits really quick. They recognize it, but it's expensive to scrap things. I was talking to a chemical company the other day. 40% of the value is how much it costs to scrap it. So if we can extract just a little bit more value, and MROs are doing the work. The MRO business is booming right now. They see what's coming in over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. So now we've kind of provided an outlet to the industry to basically say, listen, if you have work coming in, you can come in and get stuff at a discount because it might be expiring. If it's a chemical, it might be, as removed, you can tear it down for parts. And so people always say, well, how many airlines do you have on the system? And we have plenty that, help use us, but really the ones that are going to be buying are either going to be the parts trader who speculatively picks up inventory from a manufacturer that's written down and they just want to move it. Or it's going to be an operator MRO type that knows their consumption and they can come in and get a little bit more margin on the repair, or they can, get a deal basically on a part.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, we started this in April of 2024. And when you have like software or something, you kind of come out with like an MVP one, they call it. And so I spent about a year building this, and I decided I would go live kind of at MRO in Chicago. And I think I saw you there, by the way. You were cruising around meeting with lots of people. And I just thought, the stage fright kicked in. Am I ridiculous? Is this a bad idea? Am I going to get laughed out of the industry? All those questions, doubts, and things that come in. And if MRO kicked off at like 9 a.m, by about 9:20, I was like pumped because I had already talked to like 2 or 3 people, and they were like, this is great. This is wonderful. Like, absolutely. Our first supplier that we signed up was AAR. And, it's not a bad company to start with. And then we started getting, the Duncans and the VSCs of the world. And we had, Air Trade. And we started going, we have Turbo now. I mean, we probably have about 60 companies that are listing inventory, but we have probably 450 companies in 8 months that have signed on and have come back multiple times. We have some of the biggest MROs in the world. So we have some of the biggest OEMs, and we just did a an expendables auction for Air Transat, the Canadian airline. That went incredibly well. We've done some work with L3Harris. So, as far as starting, and having an idea and kicking it off, I couldn't be happier. There's a lot that we still need to do that we want to do, but I'll say, kicking off of a business in this industry, I couldn't imagine it to go that much better. It's gone so well.
I think you hit the word. It's like I remember when I first started out. The fear factor or the imposter syndrome. I remember walking through Sun and Fun down in Florida. Not long after I got started, and you're having all of a sudden it just starts off with conversations. You're like, all right, well, wait a minute. You start out just listening to what people are telling you, right?
Yeah.
You're not selling anything. You're just listening.
Yeah.
The more you listen, you're like, hey, look, there's a real market for what I'm doing.
Yeah. Everybody says this. I wish I had started sooner. I really wish I had started sooner. I think the biggest lesson in this that I'd heard over, I used to read a lot of books and all kinds of stuff on this, but I'd heard, take the first step. Take the first step. You're not going to have it all figured out. And I mean, if this is a live example of that, and believe me, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens in the background and a lot of stuff that you deal with. But if you just take the first step and get moving, it's just been amazing. And we're tweaking. We've modified some things. I mean, if you go back and look at our plans that we wrote a year to 5 years ago, we're modifying.
Take the first step. I remember 10 years ago. I think it was right about 10 years ago. I was sitting in San Diego at a restaurant with a friend of mine who did a startup. He was getting his first investors, $2 million, and we were literally had a cocktail napkin in front of us, and we were drawing a little graph on how to best, and we are just kind of kicking some things around. And I never thought his little digital company is now a unicorn. It's $1 billion valuation, but it all started with the first step. And that's, that's what, I did tell people, look, you want to change jobs, take a first step. You want to do something, it's put the fear behind you because,
it's scary to leave that world. And the longer you're in it, the more that you kind of rely on having a team. And again, I would not take back any of my corporate experiences whatsoever because you learn from all of them. But, even when you're VP, even when you're CEO, you have a board of directors to run things by, you have a team to run things by, you have employees to run things, and you get all of this, group think that goes into whatever that is. And this is the first time that you're like just completely naked in Times Square. I mean, it's just, you're out there and you can get all the advice you want, but it's you. And it's so thrilling. And,
well, more times than not, your instincts are really good. And you think if you trust your instincts, you say, I'm just going to do this. And you put all the noise behind you.
Well, a lot of people said this was a dumb idea, really a lot did. And in the conceptual phases, a few years ago. And I've ran this by a couple of organizations in the past. They're like, nah, I don't want to play in surplus and junk business. And so fine, and that's, we're happy to, jump in and try to make a difference and have some fun doing it. And as far as this industry goes, that's the other thing is you could not ask for a better industry to try something in. And you go, wait a minute, it's aviation. It's really hard. People are set in their ways. Yes, there's all that. But, I don't know what it's like in the construction industry or in the medical industry or whatever, but this industry, I've only come across one bozo and we'll deal with him. But there's been such a realm of support. And even people that say, yeah, I don't want to really focus on surplus right now. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk again in 6 months because you will later. It's been a great year for a lot of people, and so the aircraft market has just been really strong. But even just you know, you don't have to cold call a lot. You don't have to get told a lot of no's. Everybody is so willing to work with you and talk to you. And what we always tell people is because we're new, you know, if let us know what other pain points you're having around surplus. We're trying to stay in that lane and go really deep on that. And so we've taken some feedback and made some product innovations and that kind of thing. So
Surplus is hard. So how are you segmenting things out? So you've got your market, you got your digital marketplace up.
Yep.
And people are bringing stuff to you. How do you segment it out? Yeah. Look, there's you got your business jets over here, but on the airline side of the house, you've got 737,
Sure.
new gen, some classics out there, some A320s, things like that. It's a little easier. How do you segment it out by starting from the front to the back?
Sure. So there's a couple of things, and don't, I'll just talk about big marketplaces. There's a standard inventory template, and you upload it, and you're on there. And if you want to do anything else, you have to incrementally pay. So we kind of go through a little onboarding process where we want to know a lot about that surplus inventory. And the reason why is because a big part of our value proposition is that we segment things. And so to your point, think about traders and MROs. So first off, if you're a landing gear shop, you don't want to see a bunch of windows, right? So we segment everything by commodity type. So we have your aircraft slides, your interiors, your windows, your harnesses, your electrical, your oxygen, your fire equipment, like all that is kind of segmented out so that we can make it relevant to who's doing the buying. And then of course, people tend to trade in manufacturers. So, let's see the Honeywell stuff, and let's see the, the GE stuff, and then obviously model applicability. So you have your people that are looking for CFM 56, 5B, 7B, et cetera. So we segment out based on platform, manufacturer, and commodity type. And then we do, this is the other differentiator, and I don't think we're ever going to lose this. This is in our DNA as we continue to grow. But we are, on the surface, it looks like we're just a listing platform, but we do a lot of connecting behind the scenes. And so a major element for what we do is we take an inventory, we list it, we push it on LinkedIn. Of course, you all see that. We push it through emails, but we pick up the phone and we're calling. And the difference is a lot of the big marketplaces and a lot of companies are calling all day. How could, buy our product, come to our event, sell a banner, all that. And we're calling and saying, hey, I got a new package of hardware that just hit. Do you interested in taking a look at it? So if you think about it, it's a listing marketplace, but it's also like a channel partner in getting your inventory sold. And so, our DNA and our thesis and our ethos is if we can get your buyer and seller connected on the right inventory and get a deal done, because there's a discount when you list with Oyster. This isn't your, hot APU that just is off with a tag. And if we can do that, then our revenue, our share, our everything will come, over time. So we spend a lot of time on, yes, it's listed, but then we do a lot of legwork behind the scenes. And that, I don't ever want to give that up. And you say, well, you're a small company, as you get bigger, that'll happen. But I don't think so. I really want to keep this as a listing service, but we also provide a lot of support behind the scenes as well.
No, it's awesome. Friendly phone call. Hey, to a landing gear MRI. We just got, a couple ship sets in, and these part numbers, if you ever, when you have a need, give us a call. They're here.
Exactly. And they may not be here tomorrow because, that price is dropping and you just have that demand. And so, it's a lot of fun. I'll tell you, I've had a few really good rewarding experiences over the years. And, I would say this one beats them by 10, just for the fun and for the ability to see things happen and to help people make things happen.
How do you set pricing? I mean, obviously a lot of USM pricing is dependent on market.
Sure.
Are you kind of looking at the market every day and saying, hey, these things are selling for, CFMs right now are through the roofs?
Yep.
So
that's there's so many differentiators between what we do and those big marketplaces. So we don't have the averages, of a big marketplace to say, hey, there's this much volume coming through, and the pricing on those marketplaces can be questionable depending on what it is. If it's a commodity like a light bulb, it could be really good. If it's an engine, it could be really bad, just because they don't trade them through RFQs. But so we have built a network of suppliers in those categories that sort of help us with valuations at times. So we don't, what we'll do is I'll be like, hey, I have a list. Of course, I'm not going to tell you who, but what do you think it trades for? And these suppliers help me, come up with valuations. And, by being in that network, and they kind of get to see things first and almost get a first right of refusal. Okay. So to me, the most accurate data you can get is with an active trader. And so we anonymize, or however that word is. I mean, we don't share who or anything, but basically we kind of use our trading network to help us come up with valuations. And then we have our own set of sources that we use to help find, fair market values on prices and what sells and what doesn't. And I always tell people, because of what we work in, you don't need a supply demand report. If it's not selling, there's probably a lot of supply and there's not a lot of demand, but we generate that demand. And so at least we attempt to generate that demand. And that's pretty much what we do. We have a pretty good network, and we use, as each supplier comes on, it's not like it's a closed network, right? More hardware people get on, we run the list by them first. The more landing gear people that come on, we run the list by them first. So as we grow, we'll rely on our suppliers and buyers to kind of help evaluate inventory in real time.
That's pretty. Do you ever see it getting more? I mean, obviously, technology is. Do you ever see your platform getting a little bit more? I mean, there's a lot of human. Is the differentiator with you the human interface, or do you think it becomes more digital? And look, I day trade. I love my TD Ameritrade.
So there's so much money pouring into e-commerce right now, and taking people out of the transaction. And I don't say that like, if you're going to buy a light bulb, the last thing you want to do is call somebody and go work over email. Like that's ridiculous, right? So I think we're very comfortable letting the rest of the market go headless. You know what I mean? Like, because our parts are highly negotiated, they're often packages of parts. There's paperwork inspection. So, of course, we have plans to help automate the negotiation back and forth. But in some respects, it's like buying a house. Like, do people buy houses online today? Eventually they will. Do people buy APUs? Eventually they will. Maybe. But when you have a complicated transaction, and there's multi-steps to it, I don't think we're not the first into storefronts, and we're okay with that.
See, I think if you buy a house online, you're an idiot. Because ultimately, you're going to need an attorney, or you're going to have some. You're going to want some. Unless you're a professional.
Sure.
The same goes with. There's a lot of things out there that you just. They're not commodities. And I think aircraft parts a little bit. How do you deal with traceability? I mean, a lot of stuff you need traceability on there, and that's
sure. So our MVP one, the buyer has to make an offer to open a line of communication, and that's a little different with us. And that's the reason we did that. We didn't want to waste people's time. I didn't want to be like, hey, Craig, here's a spam button where 100 people a day are kicking the tires. So somebody has to log in and basically say, I want to buy this unit for X in order for the line of communication to start. In our plans is traceability sharing. So the way it's done today is so much of this business is still analog. So Craig, you want to buy something from me, I'll email you the paperwork or a Dropbox link to the paperwork, and you'll inspect the traceability and all that. Have admired a couple of startups in this sector that I don't want to name who they are, but we're probably going to end up with some sort of partnership that helps verify documents just to, cover this because of that big, issue they had in Europe a year or two ago with the false part. So, the more we can, and everybody talks about blockchain and all that. We're not anywhere near that, and I don't want to be. We'll let the big guys figure that out before we try to even tackle that. For us, we're so deep in the middle of a surplus transaction that if it doesn't benefit that, we kick it out. Yeah. And I'll say, having worked at one of the biggest marketplaces in the world for 9 years, we saw a lot of people copy that business and try to make something of it, and they just die out. And so, at first glance, the big competitors, or they call themselves competitors, we don't. The big marketplace will just be like, "Oh my gosh, another market!" But we are so fundamentally different from what they do. It's literally, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and steak. I mean, it's just completely different what we do.
Well, that's the big differential. I was talking to there's a friend of mine who's a business jet broker.
Yep.
He's based out of Connecticut, and he'll be on a podcast in January. And one of his things, we're talking about it, is he competes against a lot of the big guys. And the beautiful thing is like, hey, you know the industry real well. You deliver a customized service.
Yeah.
There's always room for concierge service in there. You can go to the big guys. You can go get a concierge, right? And
exactly.
It all depends on what you're looking for at the time. It sounds like that's a little bit of what Oyster's doing, and your pearls are a little bit concierge.
It's high touch for inventory that people shun. So it's like the Ritz Carlton for the inventory that's been forgotten. But that's where so much. I mean, if you look at that addressable market, I mean, let's just say it's $100 billion. I think it's more than that. But if we can make a 1% difference on that, that's really meaningful contribution. And I think a lot of it is just visibility. And if you're the type of person that just wants to type in a part number and go, we can do that, and we have that. But we have to be high touch because you've tried the listing route. You put a part number up at Walmart and nobody bought it. Now what? And so sales teams, we work alongside sales teams. We don't replace sales teams. The reason why is, your sales people are going to go for, I don't want to say the easy sale, but they're going to go for, something
the most efficient. They're going to use their time efficiently
that they can take. And so when we come in, we're like, hey, let us, be that wingman to your sales team where we'll do the work on the side. And a conversation I had last week with a major lessor was like, this is great because, we're going to have a cutoff of inventory where if it's under $200,000 and it's a year or more, we're just going to let you take it and work your magic. And that's the perfect scenario for where we fit in.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. You spent 9 years with the big, what's the word I want to call it? Distributors, parts houses.
Yeah, I mean, I started the industry in 1994 when I landed in Daytona Beach and Embry-Riddle.
Okay.
And I got all my flight ratings, and then I stayed and got my MBA because I graduated when 9/11 was happening, so there wasn't getting a flying job back then. But I had flight instructed and built up. I basically have ATP requirements. I just never took the ATP. And so, my first gig in the supply chain was Aviol. And so I landed there in 2002 and, spent till 2010 there, and then moved to Memphis and, been here ever since. So I always tell people I'm not a technology guy. I mean, I'm not the person that's writing code. I can't write a piece of code whatsoever. It's just that, I'm trying to take all those years of pain as a parts trader, as a distributor, and watching everybody complains about surplus and nobody does anything about it. So that's why we're here.
I love it. Look, you're right. A lot of private equity is moving into the space. A lot of them call me and we're thinking about surplus. Or we like it. I was working with some guys up in New York, Sky Geek, which was kind of a digital. Steven Stiles up with Sky Geek, which he ended up selling. And you listen to what he was doing, and he's like, "Hey, look, I know what SKUs are selling pretty well," and it was really fascinating to learn what he had built up over the years. Very similar fashion. So
he was much more in that e-commerce trend because he's selling oil and FBO type equipment. But my hat's off to him. I mean, he had the vision, and he built up a good supply chain, and sold that business off. And I don't know what he's up to now, but
he's running a little airport up, and he sold it to he sold his company to Graco, and Willie Nelson, who I placed up there as a COO, was kind of taking over as the GM. But nice. The interesting thing to see about what Steven was doing is he would say that like cargo straps, military grade cargo straps was one of his biggest SKUs. And I'm like, why is that? And he says, because people get them and they just cut them. They don't realize that if they just unstrap them, they could reuse them. They don't care. They just cut them. So they just call them up, $35 more for or whatever So, it's really interesting to see how you've moved into this. What was the hardest part? What was the hardest part about getting started for you? Was it the mental shift, or was it
Totally.
What was the catalyst? What was the catalyst to say, all right, today I'm going for it?
I think enough years of suggesting that other people do this and being laughed out of the room. Not, it just, what we're doing is really hard. And to build a double-sided marketplace is really hard, even if you have good stuff, right? Because you got to have enough supply to get buyers. You got to have enough buyers to get supply. Buyers are completely free and will be. We don't want to put friction on the buy side. Yeah, the other hard part is the material. It's just not easy to sell. And so the catalyst was, you have this addressable market, you have this problem statement, and I don't see anybody doing anything about it. And so for me, it was getting over the just do it, right? And then, enough urge to go and try to solve a problem. And, age might be a little factor in there. I'm 48. And so I started going, well, kids are graduating high school, and I was thinking, it's time. If I don't do it now, I may never get the chance to do it. So I had the opportunity. And that's why, pretty much.
I love it.
Point of life.
And you've got a great network out there. Everybody knows you.
Yeah, that's helped. That's also been interesting. There's some people that you think over the years that they'd be the first to jump in, and they, flutter away.
Oh no, man! That's the funny thing. When I started my thing, it was everybody that knew me from my business aviation days. Well, yeah, congratulations, good. Don't ever call me.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. So now they're talking to me. Now that they talk to me a lot now, but at the beginning it was like, yeah, sure, good luck. Good luck with all that.
There was a little bit of that, but on the other side of that, you get these angels that just pop out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's why, I've built so many really good relationships since starting this, because there's a lot of traders. The owners are interested in talking. And so, when you're a sales guy trying to sell widget 1, 2, 3, it's a little different when people see that you're out there trying, one, you're a little vulnerable. You kind of took a little risk. I think there's a little bit of respect has been earned there, but also just in, trying to solve the world's problems. And you tend to just elevate to the more strategic side of the organizations with that. And so, there's been, we've gotten very, I say lucky, but, it's just been a right recipe of a little bit of industry knowledge, of some pretty good contacts, but then, just some angels that I mentioned, earlier as well.
No, I personally, I've enjoyed watching your momentum. I see the Procast every now and again.
Sure.
I see you out there doing it. A lot of people are talking about it. So congratulations on getting started. Your initial success.
Well, thank you.
We're seeing more of it. How do people get a hold of you?
Oh, that's easy. Just get on LinkedIn. So on our homepage, we have contact information, email, all that kind of stuff. But it's Jeff@oysteraero.com. And, we're excited. We're launching a new auction product coming up within a week or two. We'll be testing it out, and that'll kind of be our kickoff to 2025. And we're super excited about that because today, if a supplier wants to clear a lot of inventory, a bundle, that's why we started calling them bundles. So, you have a bundle of inventory, you can just move a couple items at a time. You can move a package, you can move an entire inventory, you can move an airplane or engine. So we kind of, trying to get a bidding event around parts. There's places you can go, but they can be expensive. You have to have a lot of organizational buy-in if you're going to, spend money up front. So, we will be specializing in more and more bundles as time goes on. The individual components are great, but the trader that says, you know what, OEM A, you're offering this stuff at 90 cents off, 10 cents on the dollar. I can't resist it. I have to stock it. And so that's the kind of material that we're going to be focusing on for 2025. And I'm really, really excited about some of the product updates. And that's the other thing. I'm not taking any salary. We're not, we put every dollar that we're bringing in right back into development. And I think, in this business, if you're not developing, you're dying. And I don't care if that's online or offline, right? So if you're not investing in relationships and investing in product and yourself and all that, it just doesn't. You're done. So
well, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, why would anybody else invest in you, right?
Exactly. But we're again, Craig. I'm first off, your podcast is one of the inspirations. In fact, you were the first guest on the Oyster Aero Pearlcast, and so you started quite a lot of fun there. And we've been doing mostly founders. We had Sharon Green at Unical, but I consider Unical going through a rebirth as well. I love the founders. If I can, just get more and more of those stories out. I mean, we had Abdal from GA Telesis. I mean, that's amazing. And just hearing him, how he started, that company. We had Carl with True Aero, David with Setna, and we've just been super blessed. Kim at KP. I mean, I'll forget everybody now, but when you look at the caliber of companies that we're dealing with, I mean, we're in the tier one. I mean, that's the one thing that I thought, if you were to say, what is the most surprising thing? A typical business model, you kind of start in like that tier 3 world, and then you kind of get a little better, and then you work up to tier 2, and then you work up to tier 1. We sneeze, and AR sees it, GA Telesis sees it, Unical sees it, PPG sees it. So I put a lot of pressure on our team, myself, everything, because we launched with tier 1s. And so, I mean, we've got, I don't remember the exact number, 8, 10, 12 major airlines getting on our system every day, the Uniteds of the world, the Southwest of the world. So it's pretty awesome.
That's success. But, you're in good company. I mean, the interesting thing is, is Abdul, great, started a great business. Kim at KP.
Yeah.
Look, I remember them 10 years ago when they were kind of just, starting, and David up in Chicago.
Yeah.
Setna, he's got a great business going. Carl Drush.
Yeah.
True Aero. You've got a lot of these guys down in Florida. A couple guys walked out of, they walked out of GA. They walked out of Kellstrom. They walked out of some others. They've started their own little trading companies, and they've done great. And
that's the fun thing about the podcast too, because I mean, you've had John Cuomo, and then you're talking to us. I mean, we had Lindsay Pearson with Morandi Group, and so we again, these podcasts are fun because you can go all the way up to those big CEOs, but then you also give a chance to the startups too. So we're having fun with it.
That's awesome. Congratulations on all your success.
All right, Craig. Thank you, and thanks for having us.
Jeff, thanks for coming back on.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Steve.